Hello, welcome to this side event of the UN High-Level Political Forum, focusing on non-profit leadership and data stewardship in the COVID-19 recovery. This session is organized by CRT Foundation together with GovLab, Botnar Foundation, and IMAP. My name is 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐇𝐢𝐠𝐡. I am a steering board member for CRT Foundation in Torino, Italy, and a data science professor at the University of Torino and ISI Foundation. Today, I have the pleasure of moderating this session. Unfortunately, we had a couple of last-minute changes in the availability of speakers, and so we ended up with much less diversity in our panel that we have originally planned. We still hope that the discussion will be stimulating and diverse. We focus today on data-driven approaches. Such approaches have become a recognized priority for all sectors and countries around the world, both in the short-term response driven by the COVID-19 crisis, but also for the longer-term goals of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, in particular, we speak about the changing role of nonprofits in relation to data and the value of data for the public interest and the COVID-19 recovery. We do this with several thought leaders at diverse philanthropic and nonprofit organizations, which I will now introduce. I am joined here by Massimo Lapucci, Secretary General of CRT Foundation. CRT Foundation is Italy's third largest foundation of banking origin. Massimo Lapucci is also Secretary General of Fondazione 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐇𝐢𝐠𝐡 𝐥𝐞𝐯𝐞𝐥, which focuses on impact investing, tech and innovation. He's also the CEO of OGR Company, a large former industrial space in the heart of Turin, Italy, that was recently converted into an innovative international center for experimenting at the crossroads of culture, the arts, research, startup, and innovation, also in partnership with globally renowned accelerators. Massimo is also the former chairman of the European Foundation Center. We are also joined here by Stefan Germann, the Chief Executive Officer of Fondazione Botnar. Fondazione Botnar is a Swiss-based foundation which champions the use of AI and digital technologies to improve the well-being of young people in urban environments. He has spent over 25 years working in several different roles in Africa and Asia, focusing on health-related development for children, relief, and advocacy. He was previously the Senior Director of the World Vision's International Sustainable Health Partnership, based in Malaysia, and he has previously held several board and advisory board memberships that spanned the Partnership for Maternal, Newborn and Child Health, UBS Optimus Foundation, the Global Health Program, and the Graduate Institute in Geneva, and several others. Going on, we are also joined here by William Barron. William Barron is the co-founder and chief executive officer of iMMAP. iMMAP is a leading organization providing information management services to humanitarian and development organizations, enabling partners to make informed decisions that ultimately aim at providing high-quality, targeted assistance to the world's most vulnerable populations. William Barron is a public health engineer committed to poverty reduction with over 35 years of experience in humanitarian relief and development. Before laying the foundation for iMAP, Mr. Barron worked on water supply and sanitation for health projects for international NGOs and the United Nations in Haiti, Cambodia, and Pakistan. And finally, we have with us Stefan Verhulst. Stefan is the co-founder and chief research and development officer of the governance laboratory, the GovLab at New York University in New York. GovLab is an action research center focused on improving decision-making using advances in science and technology, including data and collective intelligence. Stefan Verhulst is the research director of the MacArthur Research Network on Open Governance, the chair of the Data for Children Collaborative at UNICEF, a member of the high-level expert group of the European Commission on business-to-government data sharing, as well as of the expert group to Eurostat on using private sector data for official statistics. He's the editor-in-chief of Data and Policy, an open access journal by Cambridge University, and in 2018 he was recognized as one of the 10 most influential academics in digital government globally. So we very much look forward to listening to the perspectives of these leaders, and without much further ado, I would like to pose the panel the first questions. We will expect answers from and comments from our panelists in the order in which I have introduced them. I will be moderating the session. The first reflection I would like to bring up is the following. The ongoing COVID-19 crisis has exposed the limits of current systems and processes, and it is prompting many organizations to rethink their role to better support the recovery. So my question to the panelists is, what do you think is the unique value proposition of the nonprofit sector in these challenging times? And what is the approach specifically of your organization? And I'll give the word to Massimo Lapucci to get the discussion started.
Thank you, Ciro, and good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, allow me to thank everyone for joining us here today, and for Foundation and for Fondazione CRT, and personally also speaking. I think this is a great opportunity to have this discussion as an important achievement. And also, as a member of the 𝐓𝐡𝐞, I would like to thank the United Nations Economic and Social Council and the High-Level Political Forum for giving us also this opportunity today. Allow me to share some thoughts on your first question, Ciro. I think that we really, and we all know, we are living in challenging times, from climate change to economic inequality, forced migration. This is something we feel a lot as a foundation. The difficulties confronting also decision makers are unprecedented in their variety, complexity, urgency, and I also think in their speed. If those emergency were not enough, I think that also in the past year, well, in the past 18 months now, we have also been forced to face the crisis posed by COVID-19. That was really unthinkable in this proportion and in this magnitude. And also, it has obliged us to find new ways of living. I mean, from the way in which we work, but also the social interaction, completely different. What it is clear is that it is no longer time, and it no longer seems possible to return the way we were before. So also, this is an opportunity and must be a lesson learned. And coming to the data and the 2030 agenda, I think that looking towards change at a complex level, the road, but also the direction to take is clearly indicated by the SDGs. And this growing trend emerging in the philanthropic sector, that is something that I personally welcome, fueled by the focus also on the post-pandemic recovery phase, is a greater attention to the SDGs. And also the SDG are now a central common framework. We have to use them as a central common framework. Fondazione CRT is taking steps in this direction, also in the conviction that modern philanthropy must also be based on data science. This is extremely important. It's also a matter of methodology. With the SDGs on one side, data science on the other, we can see, let's say, the real touch points. Data and its science can provide the analysis and forecasting tools to address some of the major challenges in our society, as also the UN agenda tells us. And I also think that as the sector, the philanthropy sector, familiarizes itself more with these new approaches, inspiration and also learning can be found within the profit sector. The profit sector data are already, the data science is considered transformational in the way it helps large companies make decisions. So it is not just a matter of one-way learning, but rather an opportunity for a reciprocal exchange that paves the way for what I used to call a greater hybrid process, hybridization between sectors. The non-profit sectors, so without changing, without distorting itself, its nature, has the opportunity to draw inspiration from profit in terms of more efficient use of resources, accountability, and transparency, using also innovative scientific approaches of big data and AI to identify needs, target intervention, and also assess more impact. At the same time, I think the for-profit sector is able to learn how to build its action around the fundamental principle of social and environmental sustainability. It's a sort of, let's say, humanism or neo-humanism, capable in perspective of doing good things, doing good to the economy, but only in a view of expanding their activities, but also as a level of reputation, I think, as businesses start to be perceived as a system also attentive to improving the quality of life of community and of people. This is the purpose of the philanthropy sector. So it's good to see that this is also, this hybridization process can be a fundamental step towards the development of a more dynamic society. And so we can be better and also be better prepared to face changes and to respond to new needs. This is what I mean, reducing the disconnection between citizens and public and private institutions. That is also something that we see every day, also with a great consequence on the political arena. And that said, even though the for-profit sector has been using big data and AI for a long time, even though they are using this, it is largely shared, I think, that the market alone is unable to extract the social value through big data and data science. And so in order to expand and further develop the conversation around this topic, I think it's fundamental, to get an engagement, an involvement of policymakers. And it is that in this respect that I think we can find also the fundamental role of the European institution, at least, let's say, on this side of the world. And through, also I think, though relationship and dialogue with European institutions have ample room for improvement, as we all know, we should recognize that the European Union, especially, lately, has come forward to help bridging this gap in this narrative. Firstly, the European Commission has recognized the use of data for public interest and for public purposes as an integral part of the strategy and for the digital single market. And from the implementation of the well-renowned and famous GDPR and the Data Governance Act. So also the current climate, I think, in the current climate, the European Commission has identified digital transition as one of the 3 priorities for the post-COVID recovery phase. And I think this is extremely important. Thanks also to these undertakings by the European institution, I think also Europe has positioned itself as a particularly good space in which to develop the use of data for social good. So I think that we all, in a common effort, must have clear in our minds, first of all, the 17th Sustainable Development Goal. That is partnerships for the goal. This is extremely important, and we used to remind us and tell this every day at the foundation, and to talk about this to our stakeholder. The time is now, and as we face these challenges, I think it becomes necessary to adopt a series of tools integrated. When we look at our philanthropic sector, I say that there's no magic formula when we talk about philanthropy 2.0 or even 3.0 or more. What I see here, it's there are now different new tools and responses for an environment that is rapidly in a rapid evolution. And among the opportunity that data offers, the philanthropic sector, I think, can have the ability to provide that scientific, I mean, the data sector can have the ability to give us more methodology, a sort of key of knowledge for to help philanthropy becomes fundamental, and to be able to better reach its own mission. I'm really convinced about this. And some claim not only a scientific approach to philanthropy, but a real science for philanthropy, to provide that there's a strong evidence of effectiveness of donors, which is currently still missing, I must say, especially in Europe. And I think that data can really have a significant influence in our work, because it can assist in enriching and elevating impact evidence as part of funding requests, and also can similarly be a kind of service to donors who are increasingly called upon to show a higher level of accountability and prove the specific impact. So my experience in Fondazione CRT and and also through my role as a former chair of the EFC in Brussels was incredible in this respect, meaning that it was the correct timing. I think I had the great opportunity to stimulate the discussion together with Ciro, actually, I must say, around the use of data for social good, and other incredible stakeholders, and also with Stefan Verlust, through I would say advocating it through dedicated and increasingly appreciated session, appreciated especially by the young crowd working in the philanthropic sector. This is something I want to mention. And so I think that discussing the role of philanthropy in the creation of data strategy, data market, sharing the experience of international experts in the field was really all about value creation. And also this vision is also evident, and for me is extremely inspiring every day, if we consider also the long-standing investment that we as CRT Foundation have had in the last 3 decades ago. I mean, for us, data it is not something new. It's not a fashion. It's not a big data movement that started, more recently compared to the history of algorithms and also science of complexity. The foundation invested about 44 million euros in this part in these last 3 decades, especially through ISI Foundation and the Lagrange project. So I think it's part of the evolution. And in synergy, as I was mentioning, with ISI Foundation, and above all with Ciro, is here today with us, this ambition now took the form of the European Data Center for Impact and Social Good, a center that is hosted here at the OGR, the place where I am right now, and you see just behind me, with a new vision. I think the scope is above all is to challenge and increase, foster the use of data science and AI to better identify needs, guide intervention, but also evaluate the impact of decision and policies. And so whilst the role of function of the center is to facilitate problem scoping, I think that also its main area of focus consists of the science of success for philanthropy, including global issues such as future of cities, migration, internal displacement, impact investing, and impact finance. So this is, I think, the key and the vision that we want to develop right now in this respect. And I see that the approach that we have cultivated can demonstrate together with other partners the unique role that philanthropic actors can play and the value that we can bring to the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Massimo. And I will now leave the floor to Stefan German, with the same question. What is the unique value proposition of the non-profit sector in these challenging times? And what is Fondazione Botnar thinking about this in terms of current response and longer-term priorities?
Yeah, thank you, Ciro. And it's good to be connected here from where I'm currently working in Morocco. We are starting up a Morocco program, so I'm working this week out of Morocco. So I hope my bandwidth will carry us through the discussions here. So we're looking at the role of sort of non-profit leadership and data stewardship in that sort of, post or well, COVID sort of phase, but then as well, hopefully looking at post-COVID related issues. I think we have to acknowledge that COVID just exposed some system-wide weaknesses that have been in the making for many, many decades. And we therefore need to recognize what are some of these trends that then directly link to the digital world that we are living in, and what are some of the opportunities on one hand, but what are some of the significant challenges on the other hand. I think Massimo highlighted clearly some of the tremendous opportunity that this sort of digital age that we are living in has. Linked to, and I'm sure we will hear more from Stefan Verlust on the government lab, the GovLab, in terms of enhancing transparency, enhancing traceability in terms of good governance. So there are many kind of very positive aspects. And as a foundation, we have chosen, we are relatively new and young, to really focus on how can we leverage AI and digital and data science for the enhancement of the well-being of young people. Now, I would like to address here three main points that I find are absolutely critical moving forward, not just from a non-profit perspective, but from a collective perspective, be that for private sector, government, or civil society. And that is starting with what I see the overarching critical element is we need to stimulate a new dialogue and a new discussion around what do human rights mean in the 21st century in a digital world. There is an excellent report by the UN Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty to the UN General Assembly 2-3 years ago called the Digital Welfare State. And interesting, it's the only UN official report where I found the term zombie-like stumbling. And he's warning that basically we are at high risk, that collectively we are stumbling like zombies into a dystopian sort of situation if we are not tackling some of these fundamental issues around human rights in a digital age. I think we are actually at risk of becoming all, and I use that term not lightly, but there is the risk that we become modern day data slaves, not just by big tech companies, but as well by the state. We need urgently very effective tools for human rights impact assessments that really looks end to end in terms of for government to develop from an R&D perspective up to a deployment perspective of AI and data solutions within the state. The same should apply to any private sector company. Before any kind of solution should be put on the market, there should be like a seal of a medical device that has an FDA approval, whether that actually is enhancing human rights end to end in that solution. So that's the first point. The second point is, I think, and we need to move away from just thinking about data privacy and embrace the concept of data solidarity, especially in the health field. We've been financing together with some other foundations, including the Wellcome Trust and the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, a 2-year commission that is a Financial Times Lancet commission on health data governance, and it's finalizing its report, and the report will be launched at the World Health Summit on the 25th of October, and they really look at this issue of data solidarity. The third point, and I'll get to the data solidarity in a minute, the third point is really the urgent need for trust architecture. We really need to sort of enhance the level of trust and leverage technology and digital solutions in terms of the trust architecture within health. A good example of a total failure in Europe was recently last year in March, when there was initially an excellent effort of various academic groups working together on a pan-European proximity tracing, sort of privacy protecting app that would have been a pan-European solution. We ended up with very nationalistic agenda where every country ended up with its own sort of proximity testing, tracing app, and it was a total mess. There was no agreement on what sort of standard should be used in terms of centralized data, distributed data. And it shows that there is still a long way to go for us actually to get sort of really clarity on, you know, what are fundamental principles around this human rights aspects, where, of course, the data privacy is an element to it, but countering that, the data solidarity, given the public health interest and the public health stakes in terms of these issues. And that requires collectively to rethink the sort of architecture of trust within the digital spaces. So in my sort of first input, and I can get a little bit more to that, as a foundation, we see, and we are in a fortunate position to have a significant capital. So I would say that foundations, sort of philanthropies that have their own capital, we have a unique role to play to take significant risks in terms of innovation of social transformations. Government with taxpayers can take very little risk to be innovative and fail. Private sector, they only innovate where there is a clear upside in terms of financial returns. And civil society, who are dependent on donors, and specifically those who have like smaller sort of fundraising efforts, they cannot take high risk in terms of innovative failures. So foundations with their own endowments and their own capital really should take much higher risk. And I would really urge that we as foundations actually are more willing to have more failures within our programs and projects and grants that we are supporting, specifically in the digital space, so that we can push some of these really urgently needed innovations, test them, and then support them to be rolled out at large scale. So one large initiative that we are supporting, and I will conclude my initial input with that, is to set up, and it was stimulated by the International Telecoms Union ITU first AI for Good Summit in 2017, where Professor Gary Marcus, one of the leading thinkers around AI, called for the need of a CERN for AI, like the CERN in nuclear science that is bringing in collaborative efforts of now more than 30 states. So that idea, we together with the World Health Organization, Wellcome Trust, and some others have been supporting the incubation of what is called IDAR. It's the International Digital and AI Research Collaborative. It has its hub in Geneva, but it will have hub all around the world. And the aim is there to really, from a health perspective, to collaborate, combine financial resources for AI and digital health research, and then support that as a global public good. So anyone who is interested, you can go on their website. It's IDAR, the sort of spelling is IDAIR, and you will find more information. They are aiming to have a formal incorporation and launch of an international association as an international organization based out of Geneva, and really fostering that collaborative effort of pooling research, financial resources, research brains, and collaboration for global public goods within the health, AI, and data science space. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. We now go to William Barron from IMAP, and we keep reflecting on this section. What are the value propositions coming from non-profit sector actors at these times, with the perspective of William Barron from a humanitarian response organization? The floor is yours, William.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in the session. I have found that these type of venues are very important in terms of exchange of ideas and demonstrating the relevance of our work. I am located in Washington, D.C. Further to what Ciro had said about IMAP, I'd like just to say that we are a not-for-profit organization. We are an affiliation between two organizations. That's IMAP Inc., which is based in the U.S., and IMAP France, which is based in Marseille, France. IMAP has been operational for over 15 years, and our mission is to harness the power of information to facilitate evidence-based decisions to improve people's lives. I think as a public health engineer and the experience I've had in the field for many years, I've realized the power of data, the importance of it in terms of providing cost-efficient and effective service delivery and influencing decision-making, which ultimately leads to improved outcomes for the beneficiaries and the vulnerable communities. We do offer a full spectrum of information and knowledge and change management skills, linking that with expertise with thematic knowledge. So we do touch on all the sectors, basically: food security, health, nutrition, education, DRR, mine action, protection, and it's been really interesting to see how our organization has grown and the increase in the number of partners that we've had over the years and the importance of those partnerships. In relation to the question that Ciro has asked, I think that I would like to demonstrate 6 basic buckets, I could say, or important points that kind of demonstrate that they are the demonstrated value for the nonprofit sector in terms of the work we're doing. I'll list them now and then go into them a bit later. That's partnerships, innovative solutions, sector-specific expertise combined with technical leadership, understanding and supporting the broad spectrum of the public health system, the value add in country-based presence and field work, and capacity building at the national level, which we think is one of our biggest priorities in terms of the work we're doing, in terms of building up the local capacity and eventually handing over a lot of our expertise. There are 2 projects, 2 initiatives that I'd like to mention, which are specific to COVID. When COVID started, many of our field-based programs, we retooled or we refocused a lot of our work around COVID. We're working in many countries around the world, from Afghanistan, Syria, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Yemen, Colombia, DRC, Burkina Faso, and many different countries globally. And in those country programs and the work that we're doing around improving information and data for decision makers, we ensured that the work that we were doing was focusing on the COVID response and ensuring that accurate data is being provided to the community. Within the last several months, we've started an initiative with some other organizations in terms of what's called the Geographic Information Management Initiative around the COVID-19 vaccine delivery. That work is really in line with the SDGs, the Nexus and the World Humanitarian Summit, as well as the Grand Bargain commitments. Basically, our aim with this initiative is to reinforce technical coordination at the global and country levels and bringing together experienced nonprofit, volunteer-based, private sector, NGO organizations that are thematic and information management and GIS, Geographic Information Science, leads in the humanitarian development world. And those companies, those organizations are IMAP, 𝐓𝐡𝐞, MAP Action, AUKUS, Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team, which is HOT. This initiative was started. We're seeking funding for it. We do think that this initiative will ensure a global coordination at all levels with all stakeholders for a smooth implementation without the duplication of efforts. And we're focusing on 15 countries, which we think that are those that this rollout of project activities are required, with a good portion of them in Africa, as you would expect, around the COVID-19, that this is crucial. The aim of the GIM initiative is to improve the understanding around information and identify data gaps at country level, ensure a dissemination of relevant information for identifying micro-planning processes and vaccination initiatives at the country level, and improve the learning processes as well as local capacities around GIS and information management activities. The second project or second initiative we have, which is funded, it's a USAID Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance funded project in 6 countries: Bangladesh, Syria, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, DRC, Congo, Colombia. Is basically a COVID-19 situation analysis project. As I said, it's funded by USAID. We hope to effectively address information sharing gaps and coordination structures that effectively undermine the efficiency and effectiveness of the humanitarian response in these 6 countries. It's an innovative approach in terms of combining secondary data research, primary data collection, and independent research to provide the data and information needed for evidence-based decision making. So going into those 6 buckets I mentioned, those 6 groupings of things that are key, the first one was partnerships. Partnerships has been, I think, very important on my mind for many years, especially in terms of developing this whole process around the power of data and improved decision making. We cannot work in a silo, and those 2 projects I mentioned, the GIM initiative and the COVID-19 situational analysis, partnership is something that is key to those projects. Innovative solutions. We are using innovative solutions around remote and collection of data, around primary data collection, around remote sensing, and some AI work to ensure delivery of high quality, quantitative, and quality data and analysis to enhance the country-based decision making. And that is representative in the work that we're doing in those 2 projects. Sector-specific expertise combined with technical leadership. We have experts in information management that are sector experts as well. That allows us, and specifically in some of the sectors that we have been key in the past 10 to 15 years around health, around food security, to allow us to provide and identify the needs of communities in low and medium income countries. We are basically generating data and analysis that can support the identification of vulnerabilities within the humanitarian response system. Both the projects that I mentioned also understand and support the broader public health system. We are a leader in terms of the work that we're doing with the Global Health Cluster around information management with support from our donors. That allows us to provide more and understand the specific analysis that's required in terms of primary and secondary data, identifying and defining a baseline data, which is important in terms of looking at the response for public health related emergencies. And we all know that this COVID-19 and this pandemic is, I can say, a test. It's getting us prepared for more work in the future. Unfortunately, I don't want to be negative, but I think that we all know that this is something that we need to think very seriously in terms of our future work. The next group I'd like to identify in terms of an importance is the value add and country-based presence. IMAP has strong country presence in over 10 countries. We're a member of the Standby Partner Program, the SURGE program, the UN SURGE program. We have MOUs and agreements with 9 UN agencies in terms of providing expertise around information management to responses in the Standby Partner Program. Lastly, I'd like to mention the capacity building at the national level. It's a priority for IMAP. We've been structuring our projects such that if we go in, for example, in Nigeria, we'll start with heavy international technical expertise, which are matched up with national staff that are mentored over a period of time. And then eventually the project, as it has evolved in Nigeria for us, it's a USAID Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance program. It's transitioned into a program that's almost completely national with all our staff except for a few, the country representative and some key technical lead staff are all national staff working and supporting information management support in all the different sectors there in Nigeria and Northeast Nigeria. So that's what I'd like to present in terms of a response to Chiro's question. And thank you for listening. And over to you, Chiro.
Thank you, William. And last but not least, I now leave the floor to Stefan Verhulst from GovLab, again reflecting on this point of the unique value propositions of the non-philanthropic sector. And after Stefan's comments, we will make another round of discussion with focusing on another perspective. Stefan, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks so much, Chiro. And it's quite daunting to follow all those amazing interventions. And so I'm not sure how much originality there is left in what I have to add here. But I do want to reflect on some of the work that we've done, and also especially going back to your core question with regard what is the unique value proposition of the nonprofit sector, including of course, philanthropies as it relates to the response to COVID, but also response to other threats and challenges in today's world. And as you mentioned, we are an action research center, which basically quite often means that we work with partners in the field, and we have done a whole range of initiatives around COVID-19 and other challenges as well. But quite often we also act as an observatory, trying to understand what is actually happening, taking stock of what are some of the lessons learned and what are some of the trends that we are seeing in order to strengthen the field and in some cases develop new fields that are important to advance the way we go about improving people's lives, advance the SDGs, advance human rights, as Stefan also emphasized that we shouldn't ignore, despite the fact that, of course, anyway, we are confronted with amazing challenges that quite often require urgent responses, but we shouldn't indeed do so in a way that undermines existing values and rights as well. And so from anyway March 2020 onwards, one of the initiatives that we've developed was basically developing an observatory with regard to how data is being used for COVID-19, and also what are some of the initiatives that we can identify that are interesting to explore further. And so we developed a repository, which was, and I will share it in the chat, that I would almost argue is probably the largest repository. Of course, we would never claim it's the most complete one. So if you feel like we are missing a few initiatives, please share it with us. But at least it was a repository of data initiatives with regard to COVID-19, in order to understand what are some of the responses and in order to understand what are some gaps, but also what are some emerging value propositions. And basically, based upon that work, we identified at least 4, and again, as I said, meaning several of you already have pointed to some of those value propositions, but at least 4 important value propositions that the nonprofit sector, including, and I would say especially the philanthropic environment, can and has stepped up. And the first one relates to, I think, what Stefan and William also was referring to, which is really about collaboration. And as you know, Chiro, one big lesson learned from working with data is that actually, in order to develop initiatives, data for good initiatives, it's all about collaboration to a large extent. Because in a large way, quite often the data you need, you don't have. The expertise you need, you don't have. And in other occasions, quite often the technical infrastructure you need, you don't have either. And so we need to really start thinking about, do we develop new kinds of public-private partnerships that support answering questions that can improve people's lives, but also do so in a responsible way. And from my point of view, what we have seen, that nonprofit sector and especially philanthropies are uniquely positioned to actually facilitate those kinds of collaborations, bringing different parties to the table that can work together in a collaborative fashion towards providing insight that can be acted upon by those stakeholders that obviously are in the field and need that kind of insight to make a difference. And so collaborations, data collaborations, I think from my point of view, is really an area where the nonprofit sector can excel and can also build that kind of capacity to develop data collaboratives that others quite often not have or are disincentivized to actually establish. And it goes back to what Stefan and Massimo said about the unequal philanthropies, where they actually don't have additional kind of concerns and disincentives to actually take risk beyond actually going and making investments in initiatives that might be risky, but ultimately can, if successful, change the way we go about things, including change the way we collaborate. And I like the concept of digital solidarity or data solidarity a lot, because that is in sync with a lot of the work we've done as well. The second, of course, it's not only about collaboration, it's also, more importantly, perhaps about trust. And I think without trust, data, frankly, becomes toxic. And you see privacy protective behavior in the field, i.e. people don't seek out the services they need because they don't trust that their data will be managed in a secure and trusted environment. And again, that's an area where nonprofits are anyway have long-standing capacity and also have unique competencies in order to become the data stewards of the 21st century. And I think that's an area that, as you know, Ciro, we have done a lot of investment in, is really about what is the data stewardship functions of the 21st century. And I think nonprofit organizations are uniquely positioned and bring that additional value proposition, from my point of view, to actually fulfill that role. The third one is really, again, building upon what was said earlier. I think nonprofits can be innovators in the way data is being used, but more importantly, innovators as it relates to the questions that data seeks to answer. A lot what we see is that, and again, I've said that on numerous occasions, that the insight is only as good as the questions we seek to answer. And I think nonprofit organizations have this unique capacity to actually push ourselves and say, well, what are the other questions that need to be answered to really make an impact? And I think in the COVID-19 environment, we saw that initially, obviously, a lot of the focus was on digital epidemiology, right? So what are the infections? But I think it were the nonprofits that pushed us to really think harder, that anyway pushed us to think about, well, is it true that the impact of COVID-19 is equal across every demographic group? Turns out it isn't, of course. And also, what are the additional kind of impacts on mental health, on long-term educational attainment, and so on? And I think that's where the nonprofit really stepped up, from my point of view, to actually push us and reflect on other questions that are important to answer using data than just the epidemiological ones, which are, of course, crucial and important as a foundation. But obviously, a pandemic is not just a public health crisis. It also affects many other elements of society. And that's, I think, where nonprofit can really illuminate the type of questions that are important in addition to the public health ones. And then last, the fourth area, and again, it goes back to what others had said, I think nonprofit actors have to become policy actors, really, in order to not just indeed reflect on, anyway, what are and how do we prevent the misuses, but also to reflect on what and how do we prevent the misuses of data. Because the existing ecosystem quite often actually inhibits certain kinds of applications that could transform the way we go about decision making. And I think nonprofit sector has a unique position and value proposition to actually think about this balance of misuse and misuse, and especially reuse of data, because that's to a large extent what we are talking about, which is really about how do we make sure that we leverage data that quite often was collected for one use for another use, but how do we do that in a way that indeed protects human rights and existing values? And I think nonprofit has a unique position to play in order to actually understand how we go about balancing some of those constraints that we might have. So those are the four, from my point of view, Ciro, unique value propositions. There are, of course, more. And of course, there are a huge amount of challenges that we need to overcome and investments that we need to make in order to accelerate those four, become the facilitators of data collaboration, become trusted data stewards, become innovators as it relates to different type of questions that can be answered by data, but also play an increased important role in the policy conversations, because that's where I feel that's what will determine how indeed, as Stefan said, whether we are becoming data slaves or whether we ultimately are really leveraging this new asset in addition to capital. What Stefan says is still remains important, and what Massimo, of course, also is anyway, really rethinking on how we can use that. But I think data has become a new asset, and we really need to think about how do we use it as an asset, not just as a toxic liability. So with that, Ciro, happy to reflect on what is needed, but perhaps leave it to you to engage in another round of engagements here.
Thank you very much, Stefan. And yes, we are planning on continuing with another round of discussion, but also I don't want to constrain the discussion among yourselves. I mean, it's a great occasion to have 4 leaders as yourselves present at the same time around such important topics. So please feel free also to react to each other's comments that we heard so far. To kick off the discussion, my second question to the panel is really about the gap between the hype and between around some technical capabilities and the reality of how these capabilities have been used. In a sense, today what we see is that in a time of big data and AI, our ability to use data to actually tackle the crisis and to plan recovery and response has been tragically limited. And Stefan earlier was pointing out what happened with digital contact tracing apps, and that's an eminent example. But I think it points to a more general problem, which is a problem of creating the right ecosystem and eventually coaching or governing or regulating even the digital transformation of our societies. So my question to you would be, what do you think stands in the way of generating more public value from data? And how can the nonprofit sector contribute to driving the changes that are necessary to those ends? And going around in the same order, I would like to leave the floor to Massimo to reflect on this, and then we will proceed in the same order as before. But as I said, please feel free also to expand on this and to react to each other's comments, because so far we have 1 hour of great discussion and I don't want to constrain it. Massimo.
Thank you, Ciro. Interesting question, and also we see that also as an issue and an opportunity every day. And I think that throughout the pandemic, we directly felt also the importance of having data, and we wanted to have data immediately available. Of course, data of quality and from as diverse sources as possible. So it's an evergreen dream, I would like to say, no, but of extremely importance. And also, as Stefan and the other colleagues mentioned before, it is not an easy task to create these favorable conditions. And we have, I think, all seen, and we have the perception, the clear perception, also of the numerous challenges that we have seen that arose this past year. I think that whilst we look to addressing this issue, I feel also we must keep in mind, I feel this, that, aside from this vast potential, we must recognize that also data poses new types of risks and the challenges that prevent it from generating its full value. I mean, also, this is used sometimes as an excuse in many sectors, and also at international level. But I think that as we go forward and strive to unlock and also has access to access this value, we must remember also to take the necessary precautions and construct a safe framework in which we can operate. This also obliges us, I think, to take into consideration the ethical, the legal, the regulatory questions with an eye to the future, and also the questions that will emerge as we move forward. It is quite similar to the philanthropic sector. As you know, there's no philanthropic market in Europe right now. I mean, we have the freedom to move people and money, but there's no common market for philanthropy. I feel with some similarities, it is similar also when it comes to data. Philanthropy can be an important key to solve these challenges around data and also drive for the necessary change. I think that also in consideration of its mission, at the end of the day, the mission consists in pursuing the public interest, and also with more autonomy due also sometimes, not always, due to financial independence, freedom from the typical checks and balance of politics and market and short-termism. I think that specifically institutional philanthropy can be well positioned, is well positioned to play a unique role, and also as a form of duty. I think I feel this very much, and also trying to ensure that the positive potential of data can be used while limiting its possible negative consequences, and also limiting the excuses of keeping telling this. I think this can be an important part of the narrative. Philanthropic actors and foundations can also act as a, let me use the term, catalyzer, meaning that they can guarantee helping keeping the human aspect at the central of the digital transformation, and also in contrast sometimes with the extractive methods of big tech. I think this is also an important difference that we have to keep in mind. The role of data in the recovery, I'm really persuaded that philanthropy not only has a role to play in mitigating the risk associated with the use of data for public good, but also I see our role also as a player, as an enabler in enabling a greater discourse and narrative between the supply on one side, so the data holders, that and also the demand, the data users. As we know, many holders, they want just to keep their data, and also they use this as an excuse also in the narrative to keep the data for their own. But I think that also encouraging the collaboration between different actors, association, research center, businesses, and the private sector as a whole can be really the key. To give you an example, we are considering to launch in these weeks a new project in partnership with Microsoft on data and social impact enterprises. The name is Impact Deal. So this is part of this narrative, and also to team up with global actors of data, and also to work together and to also to create a new training and acceleration model dedicated to startups and entrepreneurs with a social impact. Can be also disruptive solution based on data and AI. I don't think this is the the solution for everything or for anything, but I think it can be really can improve this kind of narrative that I really feel it's extremely important, and a practical collaboration, cooperation. The challenge, I think, is to join together different data holders that also can play a substantial role in this project, as an example, and also contribute to the selection of the impact enterprises, because we need to know and we need to let these new impact enterprises emerge. And this is just one example of how non-profit actors and a foundation like ours can try and can drive for change in the sector, trying to also create and implement innovative models and encouraging collaboration. So I see these a new collaboration, as I mentioned, between data users and data holders, and also across different sectors. And we see that as foundations, sometimes we have more probably easier access to this kind of people, because we are not using data for ourselves, and this is for ourselves, and this is something clear to them. We want to increase trust and ethics in the way data is handled, and of course with the help of stakeholders and scientists like you and our our renowned speakers today, because it is extremely important. This is why data collaboration is crucial in this very moment for us. And also, I'm convinced, Ciro, that it is only when a collaborative environment is created that it is possible to obtain an open sharing of information and data. Thank you.
Thank you, Massimo. And I see that Stefan Verhulst had a reaction regarding data demand and supply.
Yeah, thanks, Massimo and Ciro. And just want to build upon what Massimo said, which I totally agree with, is that there is a great opportunity here to really, think in terms of how do we facilitate matching supply and demand of data, because that turns out to be quite often the asymmetry that we currently have. As I mentioned, on the one hand, we have a demand, and on the other hand, there is supply. It's distributed, it's not connected, and as a result, we never really achieve that. Now, the real challenge here is how do we do this in a systematic, sustainable, and responsible way? Because from my point of view, there's no shortage of pilots out there that never scale up, nor is there quite often a challenge or a responsible approach. And I think, if we really want to scale up the use of data in a systematic, sustainable, and responsible way, we really have to invest in a few things. One, we have to strengthen the demand side. By which I mean is that, and I think Massimo was referring to, we have there's no European market of philanthropy. Well, I think it would be good if there would be consensus on what are the core questions that are worth investing in from a data point of view that we can collaborate on, right? And I think at the moment, we don't really have an understanding of joint questions that data could start answering that you collectively can invest in. And here, I think, as you know, we have one initiative called the 100 Questions Initiative, where we try to develop this kind of new science of questions in addition to data science. Because in addition, as I said, using data requires an understanding of what are the questions that matter, that are worth actually investing with regard to data. And we don't really have that question science in society as such. It would be interesting to see how many nonprofits have at the end of the day, these are the 20 questions that we need to answer with data. I don't think many have that list ready at hand. Now, the other thing is then the supply, and then I will stop, is that once you have a clear demand and you want to match that with a distributed supply, then you do need to invest also in what we call a new profession of data stewards, meaning we do work a lot with data holders, including private sector, and many people knock on our door quite often asking, I have this particular kind of demand, who do we engage with in the particular kind of organization or corporation with regard to the data in order to reuse the data to answer the question. And in most cases, I have to say, good luck finding out, because most data holders are not organized in a way that can respond to solicitations for data or even help with regard to data. And as a result, most of the times, this matching, as Massimo said, of supply and demand is a real complicated and very inefficient, most of the time non-professional way of doing things. And so we need new professions, chief data stewards within organizations that can actually respond to solicitations, but also know how to do that then in a responsible way, embedding human rights principles, but also thinking about how do we do this in a sustainable way, so that it's not always a one-off that we are dealing with. And so strengthening the demand and the supply would in itself already create this market, from my point of view, if we can use those terms. I prefer perhaps ecosystem, but that's really where we need to invest it.
Thank you, Stefan. Stefan German, do you have any reaction to this?
Yeah, just building on this, and as well on actually what Stefan mentioned in his first input on the 2M on misuse of data and the misuse of data. I would actually like to add two other M's linked to what hinders sort of creating public value from data, and that's the missing data. We have some patches where there is just phenomenal, basically blank spots. And especially like even in the COVID situation, I mean, like I've spent more than 15 years working in Africa, but some parts of Asia, there is basically, massive amount of missing data. And the other one is what I would call muddy data, and maybe William can kind of contribute to that. But, I used to work for a very large international development NGO with a strong child focus operating in 100 countries, but the quality of the data was in some situations really crap. And of course, data science with large data sets helps us filter out the crap data. But if we have, majority of data crap or muddy, it's not going to help us to gain the kind of insights we can create. So I do think that sort of missing data and the muddy data is really something we need to address. The other one, I think we need to move much more to what I would call a human-centered design approach, or what Michael Patton, one of the leading evaluation thinkers, has been stating years back, of utilization sort of focus. We need to have specifically young people. I mean, in some geographies across Asia and Africa, majority of people are below age 30. They are the digital natives. They are the ones who actually should drive, what sort of, insights should we gain from data. So moving really from a sort of expert-driven approach of creating value out of data for the public to a really sort of democratized human-centered design approach, where micro-narratives, I find this is one of the most promising areas of really starting to change the way we understand what's happening. If we could really have, millions of sort of micro-narratives around certain issues, and then we not only use sort of natural language processing and machine learning, but as well bring in deep insights from sociology, anthropology, political science, etc., in a cross-disciplinary manner to really start to analyze at large-scale micro-narratives, we really would start to get a much better understanding what's actually going on in a much more real-time manner.
Thank you, Stefan. William Barron, do you have anything to add to this from your perspective, from the perspective of your organization, about what are actions we could carry out tomorrow as non-profit organizations to improve the ecosystem towards generating better value for citizens and communities?
Most definitely. I think in response to Stefan's point about the quality of data, yes, we do identify gaps in data, but also IMAP and other not-for-profits, I think, in this sector are key to identifying and ensuring quality data. That can be done through different ways in terms of contextual analysis and and understanding the data and its relevance. Or for example, we've been working in Afghanistan since 2010. We have developed an Afghanistan Spatial Data Center working with the Afghanistan National Disaster Management Authority. And in that, we have been key as a facilitator, a coordinator, enabler in terms of collecting data from different organizations and remote sensing, other data that is necessary around disaster risk reduction, and ensuring quality data is a big part of that work. It's time consuming. It takes experts that are that understand the sector, understand what they've got, and ensuring that there are other efforts to collect further data. In response to your question, 𝐶hiro, and I think I maybe want to come back to some of the points I made before. I think that it's important, and despite the scaling up of tools and technology, we do believe that field-based teams play a crucial and central role in terms of ensuring that the public value from data. And this is, we really, in this process, we're defining the needs, the geographic scope of an operation and its magnitude. Second, in terms of collaboration, I think we've all have stressed the importance of collaboration. If I may, Ciro, I take a moment this time just to say between IMAP and the IS Foundation, we've entered into an agreement to work closely together, basically to identify work on the domains and the relevance for IMAP's mission and how it can inform and benefit from the research projects at the ISI Foundation. So we're creating a link between the applied field-based organizations and academia. And then third is, again, capacity building. We need to ensure we have an alignment with the SDGs, enabling the growth of localized expertise that can be owning the process in the future. That also is key in terms of the work that's done around the data enablers and the not-for-profits that are doing work around data. I leave it at that. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, William. I think we have just a little less than 10 minutes left. So I think it would be great if any of you had reactions or wanted to share any closing comments. I don't want to impose a structure on the discussion for the rest of the time we have. So I will open the floor for any spontaneous comments you might have, if any, of course.
Well, Ciro, I will just anyway. If you open the floor, I'm happy to take it. But I do want to also emphasize that in addition to this new kind of professions and competencies that we need and actually invest in, because I think what we all have said here, it's not just data scientists that we need, right? We need actually a whole range of anyway, data scientists plus, which we quite often call bilinguals, right? Those that have a domain expertise and a data expertise, but also have an understanding of how do we go about actually partnering with other organizations and understand what is needed that needs to be brought to the table. From my point of view, we are at one of those moments in time where we also have to start thinking about what kind of new institutions do we actually need in order to really take us to the next level. Because I think what we have seen with COVID-19 is that the existing institutions and institutional design was not ready for the scale of challenge that we had here. And I think if we can spend more time on rethinking anyway institutions where data becomes a key asset, but in a way that is done in a systematic, sustainable, and responsible way, I think that's going to be anyway, that's one of the challenges that the nonprofit sector will have to explore. And I think the nonprofit sector is in a better situation because anyway they also have years of understanding on anyway how to do this and how to be anyway how to be agile. But we do have to anyway think about what are some kind of new institutions that can deal with some of the legacy problems that we have in the nonprofit environment. And that's what anyway what you're doing, what Massimo referred to, the center you're setting up in OGR, I think is a great step forward towards that end, where you anyway, but I think it's really about how do we anyway think in a way that connects. I think a key message from all of us, I guess, was that we need to find a way to connect distributed levels of expertise and connect also expertise on the ground, i.e. lived experience, in order to really make this happen. And I think that's could be anyway one task or one opportunity moving forward from this conversation.
Thank you, Stefan. We are getting towards the finish line of our time here, so I think it's time to wrap up this session of great contributions. Let me just remind the audience that this session has been recorded and will be made available online together with a document that provides information about our speakers, their organizations, several of the projects that were mentioned. I mean, this was a very packed and information-rich session, so we'll provide materials that will allow the audience to navigate post hoc some of the relevant projects and initiatives. Let me thank again all of the speakers for their contributions to this panel. So I thank again Massimo Lapucci from CRT Foundation, Stefan German from Botnar Foundation, William Barron from IMAP, and Stefan Verhulst from GovLab. And of course, we thank the UN High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development for hosting this side event. Let me also thank the colleagues at CRT Foundation and OGR for the organization around this event. And last but not least, I invite you all to thank the audience for joining this session, and we very much look forward for any feedback that might arise from this panel discussion. And with this, I think we can wrap up the session, and I wish you all a great day and a great continuation for this forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Piero. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.